Hello, this is my PDP skills audit video presentation. I'm going to start by just going over me as a musician. So, primarily a guitar player. I do dabble in bass. I play a fair bit of bass at home. I enjoy playing bass. I teach bass, but primarily I'm a guitarist at heart. In terms of the kind of styles and things that I play, blues, rock, country, I enjoy things like playing metal, or more sort of like prog rock, and things like that, but where I feel most comfortable are those kind of styles. A lot of melodic rock, soft rock, and like ballad kind of music as well, is all kind of on my alley. In terms of my strengths, I would say things like soloing, writing and improvising solos are all kind of my strong points. I'm fairly confident with techniques such as hybrid picking, things like groups of 5, pentatonics, that kind of thing, mixing major and minor, using different intervals like 6 and that kind of thing, are all things that I kind of pop into my playing. In terms of weaknesses, I think a lot of it comes down to playing more sort of complex and interesting chords rather than just like standard bar chords, things like jazzy chords, and then playing solos around them, and things like playing solos with triads. So that's why for my skills audit, I've basically decided to go ahead and learn a arrangement of Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder. This is a chord and melody arrangement, and then what I've done is I've played that one time through, so one time through of the sort of melody of the song, and then I've gone and wrote a solo that involves triads and tries to incorporate some of the chords that I've learned as well. So for that, basically I've kind of gone ahead and sat and kind of learned a piece, and then I've come away and written a solo for it. So the kind of objective that I was going for with the writing part of it was to come up with a solo that's melodic and incorporates some various different techniques, but really kind of works with the triads and things. So, I mean, you've got sort of, obviously at the end of the solo, things like where it really nicely kind of resolves to that E chord. So I've used E triads. I play an A triad in the first sort of part of the solo, and I also go to that second chord of the progression as well in that first part of the solo. So there's various bits dotted throughout the solo where I'm kind of going to chords, and at the end I do go into some sort of full bar for the F sharp 7, and then up to the A, where I play a Hendrix style chord, which allows me to do some 6ths in the key of A major, which I use to create a lot of tension before I ultimately resolve it to I do sort of a 6th in the E major scale to kind of resolve it. Then I finish off with a lick. The lick is something that I can't replace. So yeah, and in terms of kind of the actual learning of the song, then I kind of just went ahead and learned that a lot of the chords and things were kind of, there were shapes that I've kind of come across before, but not with, they were kind of more simplified versions. So it's been really great to kind of have a practice with those particular chords, like I believe it was the G sharp 7 flat 9 in the second half of the kind of melody part, which you could kind of say chorus, was a chord that I particularly struggled with. I mean, this is a shape that I never kind of come across before, and I found it really sort of particularly easy to kind of catch the other strings, so that was a challenge. In terms of how I'm kind of evidence this, I basically spent I would say about half hour a day just kind of working on it. I've been taking practicing for my grade 8 as well, so I've been kind of trying to get some practice in for both. and I've kind of just gone through. So I've ended up doing 4 recordings of progress, and then I've done ultimately one final product of, I've gone from there to there kind of thing. So I just sort of recorded. I did a lot of practice with the backing track, because I find playing with backing tracks far more helpful. Because I find it helps you kind of lock into the groove, and it also kind of it kind of helps me as well, because a lot of times I'm finding that I'm not having to think about the chords as much. I can just kind of, my muscle memory kind of kicks in more if I'm kind of being rushed. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but that is just the nature of practice. And I find that once it does start working out, then I know, well, now I've kind of got my muscle memory intact, and I'm not kind of having to worry about it as much anymore. And I find that ultimately, if I do that, push myself, end up rushing a few times, get it wrong a couple of times, but once that muscle memory starts to kick in, I can go away and play it without the backing track, and I find it so much easier. In terms of the FMP, for FMP I wanted to do performance. I'm hoping to try and do something like Prince. I think that kind of thing is going to be really awesome, because I mean, I love the songs at the end of the day, but I've never particularly learned them. So I've only ever really learned Purple Rain, and there's so many other great stuff from him that I really love to explore. And I think a lot of aspects of it as well will be kind of getting that attitude and that kind of stage presence in the performance will be something to obviously work towards, and kind of definitely make me step out of my comfort zone, because I've always been quite a reserved performer. I think that in terms of challenges in the bands and that kind of thing, I mean, ultimately, I feel like because of the band situation, you are kind of going with a band or an artist. A lot of that challenge of, say, picking songs and things is kind of removed. So I think that in a band, it's always a sort of a difficulty, because you've got people that want to do various things, or maybe perhaps people that aren't putting in the effort. Situations like that sort of, I feel like, come in every band. But that's the sort of main issue that I could foresee would be, say, people not learning the material, or that kind of thing. Maybe somebody's desperate to do Taylor Swift, and somebody's absolutely dying to do Guns N' Roses. We're Guns N' Roses, and that person who's doing Taylor Swift actually decides that they can't bother to learn the songs, kind of thing. That's a problem that I could foresee happening. And ultimately, I think that's just resolved by a bit of talk and a bit of sort of understanding, and a bit of give and take, I guess. But that's, for me, why I want to do performance. Work on my stage presence, work on learning songs that are kind of a little bit maybe out of my comfort zone, and writing solos as well. So rather than just sort of improvising live, I'd like to do a bit more solo writing. And even if it is giving myself the freedom to improvise at certain points as well, but I've got always those kind of licks, maybe just creating like a bank of licks for, say, like Purple Rain, that I can use, where I know where they're going to fit in the progression, where they're going to kind of really hit the spot, to give myself the freedom to then move around, and maybe look at doing some sort of like arpeggios and that kind of thing. That will be cool, and that can kind of serve the song. In terms of the videos then, so first video, I have me kind of initially going through and learning the chords. So this was like day one. I'm just kind of having an experiment with these shapes. The second video is me going through the first section. So that's the first chords and then the sort of melody part as well, with the backing track, which, like I said, I found really helpful. I always like to practice with backing tracks, and it really kind of shows the progress that's gone on. The third video is me learning the second section, which is kind of that chorus section, and that was quite a struggle, especially with that G sharp 7 flat 9 was a particular struggle, and I really just sort of couldn't get my hands going with it. But sort of after I sort of have a go around a bit in that video, there's a bit of, you can see the amount of time it takes me to kind of get to that chord is, you know, it feels like years. But then in that fourth video, then you can see the improvement. So, I mean, that was just sort of, I want to say about 20 minutes, half an hour's practice of just kind of going through that section over and over again. And I kind of got that chord a bit more fluid. And then the fifth video is just the finished job. So you see it all in action. That was, I would say, a good couple of hours worth of practice after the rest. on the section of the song where I'm playing something somebody's already written, and then obviously there was a solo writing and that kind of thing that came in, and you'll be able to see throughout the solo the parts where I kind of hang around the areas where the triads are going to come up, and it'll be quite obvious. And then I kind of hit the triads, and then I'm, you know, sort of up and down. I use a lot of sixths as well. It's something that I really like to do, and I find that especially when using like a clean tone, it's a real kind of good way to build up a sense of kind of tension and a bit more kind of going on than rather just like sort of single note lines. It makes it pop a bit more. So that's something I use, especially before I was resolving to that E, because I feel like it's a really nice place to build up a bit of tension before you resolve to that E. And it kind of ties it off, and then I tie it all off at the end with the lick. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching.